This is Bringing Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for the Bringing Down Security. I'm Brian Brake, and we have Miss Berlin and Mr. Betcher with us today.
Hello.
Hey.
So, glad you all could join us this week.
Of course.
Yeah, me
limited
too.
internet access.
Oh, really? Limited internet? How goes that?
I'm tethered right now, so
Oh, gods! Don't move the phone. I know how that is. My 4G will go quickly to no 3G in half a second if I even look at it wrong.
It's not been too bad. I'm not sure I could do a voice call on it.
Oh my goodness.
So I always tether when I'm here.
Yeah, sometimes it looks like if I even shoot photons at my phone, it will disrupt the EM signal and lose it all. So yeah, it goes, and I use it all the time because I don't trust Cafe Wireless. I don't trust Wi-Fi. It's at Starbucks and
Right.
such. So
Right.
yeah, I like the devil that I know, which is Verizon at this point. So
Yep.
You still got the unlimited, right?
no, I actually got rid of that because I wanted to go quote unquote legit and have a legit phone in case I needed to hook it up to business.
Instead of a flip phone.
Yeah. Wow, it's already started, man.
I remember when
Sorry,
you
I've been
upgraded
on a roll today.
I remember when you upgraded from the Razor to the Crazer.
Yes.
That was a big deal for
Yes,
you.
it was a big deal for me. Yes.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
Well, we do have an interview in our green room. He's been sitting there enjoying our bar food, so we're gonna bring him in this week. Welcome, Joel Scambray, to the show.
Yay.
Great to be here.
That was our automated music. Yay!
There's a clap feature in Hangouts. We could have
There are.
totally.
There is.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Simulate the overwhelming applause
Right.
or the golf clap. Yeah, one of the two.
The golf.
Well, welcome, Joel, to the show. For people who don't know who you are, and that's probably a few, not a lot, but a few. Maybe you could tell a little bit about your origin story, how you got to where you are today in information security.
You start with the tough questions.
Well,
How did I get here?
That's right.
I'm not sure. I think it's getting close to 25 years. I was looking at a colleague's LinkedIn profile of the day. 25 years he's been in security, and I was pretty impressed by that. So, yeah, I actually started off. I have degrees in biology, amazingly enough, and ended up doing a lot of computing with that, gene sequencing, protein folding, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Was at UCLA where they had a fairly robust sort of internet connectivity initiative going on at the time. This is kind of early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And really got swept up and took a job in IT out of grad school instead of the area that I was studying in. Parents were always super thrilled about that, but it worked out okay. This is sort of the pre.com, and things kind of boomed, and I sort of rode the wave. And somewhere along the way, just sort of fell into security. It was, as part of IT is sort of defending the fort, and ended up liking that. Ran into two of my longtime collaborators, Stuart McClure and George Kurtz, through those connections, and we ended up writing a book called Hacking Exposed that has spun off in a bunch of different directions, and I've sort of kept doing that. I sort of think of myself as a consultant. Although I've worked on both sides of the desk, metaphorically, I was at Microsoft for almost 5 years, and I've worked at some great companies, Ernst & Young and Cigital, and now at NCC Group. And I'm very excited to continue serving the profession. I consult for security teams, leaders, people, engineers, analysts, compliance experts, and I still find it fascinating. So,
okay,
that's what keeps me getting up in the morning.
Very good.
Joel, You wrote for InfoWorld Security Watch, right?
I did. Yeah, I sort of skipped over that, but that was kind of my IT entree. Yes, or one of them.
How did that help you? Did that open doors for you? I mean, I know what didn't Steve Gibson write for that at some point, and then you kind of built on that and sort of took over. Is that the story? Did I get that right?
I think Steve was a writer there around the time. I'm a little fuzzy. There were a number of folks. Bob Metcalf, if you remember that name, actually wrote for InfoWorld near the time I was there. The father of Ethernet, and there were a number of other folks there. But yeah, InfoWorld was kind of a lark. I answered. It's the metaphorical answering a wanted ad in the back of the magazine, which I was a reader of. They were looking for an analyst, and I thought that sounds like fun. Instead of actually having users that depend on me keeping all this gear up, I can just go have a lab where nothing matters if it falls over. And it turned out to be pretty much that. We got to experiment, have fun, do great stuff. As I mentioned, that's where I met Stuart McClure, and through Stuart, George Kurtz ran into us through the writings that we did together. So as you mentioned, it did have ramifications beyond just the sort of technical. It was a people thing, right? The network got built from there. I can remember meeting lots of great folks in the security industry, foundational folks through the InfoWorld connection, right? You say you're a journalist, and at least back then, people were interested to talk to you. I remember, talking to Bruce Schneier, Dark Tangent at the first Black Hat, early DEF CON, the guys that co-founded Ballista. That was the product. What was the name of the company? But yeah, just lots of memories, just sort of riffing here a little bit, but really got me introduced to, what I think has become a much, much bigger and maybe something we take for granted security industry, right?
Yeah.
How did they approach you? How did they approach you to do these articles? I mean, did you reach out to them and ask? Because I mean, a lot of people are often wonder how they can get involved in the security industry. For me and Mr. Betcher, it was like, well, we'll just do a podcast, because it requires as least amount of entry as possible. I mean, if you're anybody can do it as long as they've got a microphone and YouTube channel or something. So how did you get involved with them? Was it just, did you actually have to interview, or did they say, hey, we know you from blah? How did that work for you?
Well, don't sell yourself short. First of all, I mean this sincerely. I wish we had podcasts back then. This is a great, quote unquote rich media experience, and it's a wonderful form of expression, right? I mean, I've written for most of my life, and clearly the paper page is very static, and in the world of technology, it gets stale almost immediately. Mm-hmm. So this is awesome.
Podcasts are a great learning tool. Like we know so many people that, because you can't read a paper or read a book while you're on your commute.
Bingo. Wonderful play, or the pedaling the bicycle at the gym, or whatever your sort of thing right. is. Keep yourself occupied. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no. I as I mentioned, I responded to a help wanted ad in the back of InfoWorld magazine for a lab analyst, mm-hmm. and interviewed, and I was living in Southern California at the time. I flew up to the Bay Area where their labs were based in San Mateo, and they were silly enough to give me the green light and bring me on, and it just was, as I mentioned before, a super fun experience. And I agree. I think I still would recommend anybody that wants to build their career in security is writing, podcasting now, social media, what have you. Expressing yourself is a good way to sort of develop your persona, your opinions, and obviously compare ideas with everybody else in this wonderful orb orbiting the sun that we're on.
Speaking of development, how do you spend your day? Do you like spend a couple hours just alone in a room, uninterrupted, just to sit there and do some deep work? Is
Yeah,
that how you get things accomplished?
that's a great question, and something that I've struggled with throughout my career. And I think, if I may be so bold, I think technical people do generally, right? I think a lot of the people that I work with, they prefer sort of being in their own world, whether that's a cubicle in a home office, the lab corner that they own, whatever it is, and headphones on and heads down, and in the code or in what they're doing, the engineering, and that's great. I mean, that is what makes the world go round for certain. But I think anybody like that or in this industry, and I include myself in that group, has always sort of wondered at least once, and maybe struggled with the notion that a lot of there is an entire other sphere of interpersonal interaction, of things like this, right? Exchanging ideas, talking with people, and in some cases that can be an incredibly productive ground for making progress, right? Sort of, they call it the high bandwidth exchange now, right? People sort of, they'll email back and forth 3 or 4 times and go, no, we need to have a meeting, right? So
Yeah.
I think that it. Again, I've struggled with that. I think more often now I like the interpersonal interactions. I find that if I'm, sort of down deep in the weeds, I have to pull myself back up and go seek that. Because I found that, you kind of get cul-de-sac, right? You can reach sort of the limits of your own mind, and especially today with the incredible collaborative tools that we have, and the internet and what it's grown into. I mean, just to take the simple example of the Google search, right? I have a question. How does this work? Bam, there's your answer, right? And modulo the ever-present phenomena of what we're now calling fake news or fake information. You might have a very good answer. In fact, an answer from an expert in the topic, right there at your fingertips.
Yeah, I find I rarely ask questions anymore. If somebody's like, oh, blah, 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 and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Before I even ask them what that is, I hit it into Google, because it's like, and at that point, it's like some people are like, wow, you're really smart about things. And I'm like, no, I just know how to Google.
I just know how. I know how to Google well.
I'm not smart. I just know how to Google it.
That's 65% of our job is knowing that.
Yeah, it's research. One of the pen tests, cornerstones is doing research, doing what's necessary to get that information, and I find that it helps me, work that muscle on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, it is a foundational. In fact, hacking exposed, that's the first 3 steps in the methodology really add up to reconnaissance, right? And an ounce of preparation is worth a pound of. I forget the rest of that metaphor, but I think you get my point.
Yeah. So I was hunting up information on you. I was doing my own reconnaissance, and in a bio, I found that you have something called the Words of Security Wisdom, which it states that security is a type of risk management, which is about informing a decision. The security professional's challenge is to bring most evidence possible to support those decisions, both technical and non. So you see the security professional as more of an advisor to management, or should they be the people who are actually helping to manage the risk, or did you mean that in a different way?
No, I think you're spot on, and I think it's, again, if I may just jump right in, it's a mistake that I see that I've made in my career, and I see a lot of security professionals, security people make in their career is, it tends to be viewed as a technical problem, and in many cases it is. It's information security, it's IT security, right? Application security, whatever the flavors of it that we call that. And we take pride in what we do, and we tend to feel like we own the problem, right? We run the network gear, we built the configs, we wrote the code, and then a little slip happens there where we take responsibility for the risks to that thing that we're running. When in actuality, in many cases, modulo the people that are running their own businesses, in which case they're in both roles, that's not actually the case, right? There is somebody that, and I'll just pick the sort of geeky term from information security, somebody else owns the asset, right? And the person that's operating the network or developing the code is an advisor, right? I like that word, and they're a professional that is, kind of like a mechanic, right? It's not their car. They know how to work on it, how to fix it, how to get it on down the road. But ultimately, the decision to keep the tires inflated is, that's you can only tell people to do that, right? Maybe a little bit of an extreme example, but I believe that, and I guess to kind of punctuate it, I use the train track metaphor. I see too many security professionals falling into the trap, especially security leaders or people striving to move up the ladder in the profession. They put themselves in the middle of the train track, and in trying to direct the train, you call that risk, attackers, that all those things that we're trying to control. And that's not a great place to stand. Yeah. Stand on the side of the train track with your hand on the switch and direct and advise. And in actuality, I would argue you have a higher chance of being successful on your behalf and on behalf of those you serve.
So can you give us a real world example of standing outside of those tracks, but sort of directing, kind of acting as the guy on the switch?
So I picking some I won't get too specific with anecdotes from my career, but I can say that there have been periods in my career where I've made sort of career limiting decisions in trying to be the hero, right? I think there's sort of this meme or whatever you want to call it of the IT hero, right? The person that wants to sort of, again, have the deep understanding of the technology and be that person that is like, I understand this better than you, and therefore, I know what to do, and I'm going to make the decision on what's right here. And then you put yourself in the way of what can be, let's pick an example, a security incident where all kinds of bad stuff happens to the network, right? The network goes down, data is lost, something like that. And then at some point above your head, whether that's a manager or the asset owner or whatever we want to call that, I call them stakeholders, right? The people that have, an actual stake in the thing that you're operating or helping them do, they look at you with a newly negative perception, whether they believe that you are actually the person standing in front of the train or not. You've stuck yourself there. And you've lost whatever you want to call it, political capital, accountability, credibility. It is an unfortunate reality of the business of information security that it is about, again, risk management. We're about dealing with the negative potential consequences of stuff. Yeah. And I guess that's part of the metaphor of getting out of the way of that, right? Recognizing that is the business that we're in, and trying to be somebody who is an enabler of avoiding it instead of landing in the spot where it lands and being in that sort of dark place.
Sure. I think a lot of people put themselves on that train track because they feel responsible for the entire organization, right? Because so much is in technology now and so much data is out there. They forget that risks also come from other places. So like you said, there's the technical aspect and there's non-technical aspects, and they completely forget that there's the non-technical stuff that plays a role in all of that.
I think that's right. And we could get deep here, right? Maybe there's sort of a selection for people that get into IT or IT security. They tend to be that kind of, structured thinkers, people that can see patterns,
very passionate.
They're passionate. Their minds work that way. They seek a deep understanding of that which they work with, and that leads to sort of a psychological transference almost, right? I don't know, maybe there is a term for it in psychology where, they feel like they have become the guardian of the thing that they're protecting. And
right.
I get it, and I believe in it, and I think that's a good thing, right? I don't want to cast it as a negative thing, but it at some level it can have quite negative repercussions because you have to. I think back to the question of being an advisor. I think you're best positioned to make the best decisions if you're stepping outside of the scenario and you're looking at it rationally, right? Perhaps another great example is what the application security folks call a threat model.
Mm-hmm.
That is stepping outside of a scenario and modeling the scenario in a way that's helpful to determining risk and mitigations for it, right?
Is that it? So I read a story, and probably everyone else did, but the average lifespan of a CISO at a company is less than 2 years. Do you believe it is because the CISO ends up in front of the train regardless if he's trying to advise or not? Because it's the idea of the CISO's job is to keep the company safe, so that literally puts you in front of the train anyway?
There's a lot to that. Yes, the answer I think is yes, and I think that this is great because you guys have sort of unpacked this metaphor of standing in front of the train in a deep way. I think it is unfortunate, and apologies to some good friends who are security leaders, and I would think many of them would recognize this, but we're all sort of one step away from the next job in this business, and I've frequently used the term scapegoat for security leadership, and again, unfortunate reality is that many of the organizations in which people work in the security field have that mindset, right? It's probably their first risk management control, right, to borrow the word. Mm-hmm. If we have an incident that's bad enough, we can fire this person, and we're already 50% on the way to looking better because we've taken some drastic step.
Yeah.
So I think it is kind of a yin and yang thing, right? There's this natural proclivity to stick ourselves in the way, and then there's this natural tendency on the part of the people in the environment that we're in to keep us in the way because it serves their interests, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's where I say the advisor, again, good word.
So you're throwing them in front of the train instead.
Nice.
Yeah. Stepping outside of that, I think, is a critical thing to understand, again, about the profession of security, right? Okay. Being sort of arm's length and rational about what we're observing.
Yeah. All right, so to add to that, most companies pick up a CISO because they want to help build out their security program. So Mr. Betcher actually put down building and maintaining security program in our show notes. So my question about building the security program is which one is better? Do you take stock of what you have currently and then try to add a few quick wins? I mean, quick wins in terms of like the SANS top 20 controls or the CIS top 20 now. Or do you create an overarching project that will get you where you want to be from point A to point B? Which one is better? And I mean, obviously, I guess the quick wins is thinking more short term and the project is long term thing, but do you want to establish the project first, or do you want to, get the quick wins in place?
This is a great dichotomy, and I think it illustrates the technical interpersonal split, right? You said, quick wins are short term. I would argue the quick wins are the long term because you build the relationships with the people through the quick wins that may enable a longer term position in the entity, organization, whatever it is that you're trying to do. I think that's the nature of the term quick win, right? In some ways, it's somewhat ironic. Mm-hmm. It's building political capital quickly, to put another spin on it, so that you can spend it later and at your leisure and over a longer period of time, yeah. Right? On the other side of the coin, the come in with the longer term vision, the more, sort of correct technical experience and approach to things is I think a more pleasing approach to a technical person or to an architect or somebody who is looking at this as a technical problem. And in fact, it may be in some instances the correct approach, but I think as many of us have seen in IT, excuse me, there's been many a project that's foundered over time. People, things change. Management comes and goes. The technology changes. The impetus for doing something and having that long-term vision changes radically. Right? Look at things like mobile, cloud. Even in the last months or years here, Internet of Things, right, is the new tidal wave, right, to sort of hit that hot topic a little bit. I think, again, I would certainly answer option one if it was me, for the interpersonal value that you build, and also the fact that we're just in an industry where technology just keeps changing, right? And putting all your chips on sort of some grand long-term technical vision is a low probability outcome.
Joel, you are spot on with that. I had that exact thing happen with the quick wins to me. We chose to do something fast that was low risk at first, to knock it out and gain some capital. And sure enough, it happened. We stopped an attack before it became a big deal. And the IT department saw that, and it kind of led credence to what we were doing and what we were all about. And we were able to get their buy-in quickly on some bigger projects that we didn't think we would do, within 12 months. We ended up getting to do those within just a few weeks, and at least get that ball rolling on the major projects that would have taken months and months. We got started right away, and it was because of those quick wins.
I mean, that's a great example. A couple things come to mind. One, you build trust, right? You built trust in that example, and that's a lot about what we do in security. And I think we forget that interpersonal angle of trust, right? If you can get somebody, and building trust, the best way to do it, as you saw in that example, and in my experience as well, is delivering something, right? I just did something, I got something done, and people now trust you. Hey, this person got something done. We're willing to give them another shot at getting something else done, even if it may appear to be way outside of their wheelhouse, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny, your example parallels. I was talking to a good friend just yesterday, and he is in the security group, and he runs a hunt team, and he's in an organization that I will say is operated. It's an older organization in its history. It has a sort of, I'll call it a waterfall-based mentality, a very structured and someone might even argue sort of slow way of going about things. And what's popular nowadays, of course, is DevOps, right, and test-driven development and Agile, right, and his team adopted those methodologies to drive their security product back to his internal clientele. And it was like just a splash of cold water in the face. This organization that's had this very sort of, we got to really take our time. We're very risk conscious, and exactly like your example, Brian. The organization kind of was shocked, and now they're coming to them to do stuff outside of security, right? Hey, can you apply that methodology to this IT project? It's amazing.
Yeah. So they were able to revamp the PMO by embracing new methodologies.
Yeah, it's a DevOps methodology, and they had a big data Hadoop based cluster.
Okay.
And I think the notion again is be a little bit less risk averse. Be a little bit more quick on your feet. And take some risk and focus on getting something done, and then rely on the environment to give you the feedback to change it iteratively over time. Now, I'm the first to say I'm actually one of the more stodgy folks. I am more waterfall. That there's a limit to that, particularly with enterprise or service provider class software. But I do think that properly with the proper shock absorbers, I think it is definitely a mentality that's sweeping IT by storm, right?
Could you do stuff like waterfall, but use like Lean Six Sigma or process improvements to make waterfall faster than If you're not able or ready to go to DevOps or an agile model, could you use those kinds of methodologies to increase your waterfall speed?
I think that's exactly, yes. And I think that's what I see most organizations that I work with doing. In fact, I joke with colleagues, and colleagues have joked with me, not my idea, but somewhere higher than 50% of the organizations that claim they're agile are actually waterfall and kind of experimenting with pieces of the process becoming agile.
Sure.
And I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, continuous integration, continuous development, agile, DevOps. These are organizations that have arrived at these high functioning states through a great deal of time and a heck of a lot of automation. And I think they took your exact approach. I would guess, and in some cases have observed it, they took pieces of probably a waterfall, a Six Sigma, a manufacturing like stepwise assembly line process, and they really improved those pieces until over time the entire supply chain became agile or DevOps or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't an overnight thing.
Very cool. Did you have a question, Miss Berlin? I kind of stumped on you there.
I forgot what it was.
Oh, okay. All right, so we're talking about agile, we're talking about waterfall. We had Gene Kim and Josh Corman on talking about DevOps and stuff. We would like, we being the royal we of the infosec community, would like to be as far to the left as possible in the SDLC. And if your company doesn't do that right now, do you have any thoughts or ideas on how to shift cultures or to get us as far left as possible? I mean, we've heard from other people, but you're a veteran in the industry, so do you have any ideas on how to make that happen?
It's a good question. I mean, I think that one of the sort of, I appreciate you bringing up Josh and Gene, two guys that I look up to. Josh with Rugged, which he was a part of, sort of prefaced, I think, this notion of a structured thing like security running into sort of the continually less structured notion of technology development that we're running into today, right? The latest example being IoT, right? Hey, let's take some sensors off the shelf and we'll build something that we'll stick in a refrigerator and connect it to the internet, and it'll tell you when your food is out, right? What a great idea. This mashup sort of crazy, models that we have now. And my natural reaction, again, I'm kind of an old school guy, is one of horror to that sort of thing. But I am growing in my appreciation of the reality of the fact that is the nature of innovation, classically, and probably no more so than today. Again, with these, the connectivity of ideas that the internet has brought. The continuing advances that we're making in manufacturing small components that you can buy off the shelf, the democratization of software development that's ongoing. I mean, 3D printers. I mean, it boggles the mind. I mean, it's such a great time for innovation, and because the implementation doesn't stand in the way. If you have an idea, you can almost just go implement it right in the next day. Mm-hmm. So I think that security has always had to make itself comfortable, again, with this sort of advisor role, right? The train is the other metaphor for the train is innovation, is the progress of business, is the desire for faster, better, cheaper. You're never going to stand in the way of that. And again, that's a realization that has been slow for me to arrive at, but it is nevertheless a very true one. What can you do to move left? That's probably the toughest part of it, right? I mean, one of the easy answers that most organizations do is they do the post-development pen test or code review. that's a straightforward classic answer, right? Hey, we built this thing. Well, let's whack it with a hammer and see how it breaks. And, I don't mean to demean it, but that has been probably the foundational principle of the security industry as long as I've been a part of it, right? You go back to Dan Farmer and Satan, Chris Klaus and ISS and the scanners and Black Hat and DEF CON, and the breaker mentality is core to the philosophy and belief system still to this day. And that being said, your question kind of tugs at the heart of all of this, right? If you're not downstream and you're not the black hat hacker guy, let's say you're the designer, you're the builder of this technology, you're upstream. You get a chance to make some decisions about how it's going to be designed and built. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. And, all due respect to the breaker mentality, which has taken us a long way. And I've written some books called Hacking Exposed. And so I certainly don't mean to diminish or that I don't believe in it, but it really sets you back on your heels when you're the architect, right? Yeah. You have to sort of, it's the old attacker's advantage, defender's dilemma, right? Now you're the defender. So what things are you going to defend against out of the millions of things that the attack community has developed over the years against all kinds of technologies? It's a tough place to be. And as the speed of development has increased, sorry, I'll keep going here, that it's just another factor that has really made the defender's job more difficult, right? It's, particularly with that design phase, I mentioned threat modeling before, architecture analysis, slowing down an agile process, with a 2-week, sprint to do a proper threat model is, arguably impossible, yeah. Right? Yep. So, you have to set your mind to how are you going to integrate that process into something that's moving too fast for it. And there's ways to do that. And, any sort of, again, I'll go back to the Google search, right? Agile security, agile threat model, something like that. You'll find a bunch of great resources. I've been privileged to know and work with some folks that have worked in that space. So there's ways to do it, but it is a challenge just by its nature.
Very nice.
Now, you wrote an article, I think, if I can remember my recon correctly, on the concepts for things like IoT and this modern way of defending haven't changed really since the beginning. I mean, you still have to, input validation, fuzzing, all those things, all those concepts still apply to IoT. It's not really that different.
The process and everything's going to be close to the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's spot on. And I one of my favorite phrases is "same problem, different day." Mm-hmm. In some way, again, in almost 25 years of this, I get a lot of deja vu, right? The latest, I picked the Mirai botnet, right, for IoT devices, right? Oh boy, lions and tigers and bears. Here's this new attack, and and I picked a really simple example there. It's just default passwords, right, that allow you to sort of ransack an entire network of these devices. So here we go again with the old, reusable credentials, poor identity management problem, which has plagued almost everything we've done since the beginning. So and again, a very simple example, but I've started to think more lately, kind of patching these two themes together with the sort of, design versus attack, the threat model, right? How do you build something without simulating an attack or a threat analysis? And I believe that's true. I think to do proper security, one has to do somewhat of an open-ended risk assessment and derive effective controls for something that are specific to the thing you're building. That being said, I think there are patterns and reusable things. Again, authentication is a perfect example that you probably could start off with at the beginning of the design, in the requirements phase. And, we need to authenticate users. We need to make sure that, user A cannot see user B's stuff, basic stuff like that.
That so many people forget about.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and the specific example that I always like to bring up is Ross Anderson's security engineering book. Right, I think that's in the second edition now, and you know, I look at that book, and it's a great read for anybody that's building, designing stuff. It is, you know, Ross Anderson, clearly somebody who's been around the block a few times in this story. He's got those patterns, right? You know, here's how you engineer security into something. So he's been through this design, build, operate, refresh the cycle, rinse, repeat, many times. And I think this sort of notion of a library of patterns or library of reusable controls that you can sort of pull from, it would be the nirvana for me, right? For technology. Now, that's easier said than done. We keep inventing new ways to build technologies. To your point about the IoT, and same problem, different day, right? You know, all right, well, we use a different tech stack here. You know, it's Objective C or Ruby or whatever. Pick your technology of the day, and that tends to confuse us. And I think, Amanda, to your point, we forget the generic principles of okay, well, let's build a framework like Spring that'll help developers kind of work with Java, and we forget to throw in the plumbing. Although Spring is a good example, there is some good security plumbing in there.
Yep.
But more often than not, Amanda, you're correct. We think about the build part and not the risk management or the secure part.
Yep. So is that because the solutions architects or systems architects don't come from a security background, they come from the engineering background, so they kind of perpetuate the problems that we're having? Should we start, as businesses, start hiring, security or solutions architects from a security background instead of from an engineering background?
I think a lot of time they don't even have those solutions architects there. I mean, there might not be anybody architecting the product to put security in place at any step.
Lovely.
I think that's true. And again, I think you guys have zeroed in on probably the weakest part of the ecosystem here, which is design. Sort of the requirements phase. Again, it could be an IT project. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new technology or a new piece of software, right? It could be a revision. It could be a project where it's integrating different stuff or changing something. And that, where the solutions architect plays is in that early phase of making sure that we're sort of doing our proper diligence and getting the right people connected to, each other and the right components and interfaces properly connected. And we fail there. I think we're overwhelmed. There's so much change going on. This is back to the pace and the volume of change. And we just don't have enough of those people going around. I also think it is just a fact that, human beings generally don't think about the negative outcome, right? I mean, we're designing a new app for the iPhone. Cool. That's awesome. Let's make it do this functionally. Let's make it do that functional. Let's functional, right? Feature. It's a cliche thing to say, but it should not be, overlooked, right? There's so much focus on features and functionality that there's just by its nature a vast underemphasis on the threat model, the risk modeling, the risk assessment. What happens if this goes wrong? The abuse case, right? And the many other terms we have for that.
Abuse case. Our book club actually did with a fellow Sigilian of yours, Gary McGraw.
Gary McGraw.
Yep.
He is a foundational thinker. I believe. We talked about threat modeling, pen testing. We of course in security we've invented about 80 different terms for all that stuff. But fundamentally, I think Gary's original writing, as you showed there, is correct, right? Is spot on, right? There are fundamental, back to this notion of classical foundational stuff. There's fundamental things you should be doing in the life cycle of technology development, right? Yeah. Microsoft calls it SDL, right? But I tend to think more broadly now about technology development, agile, DevOps, whatever. You do these kinds of activities at the design and requirements phase. You do a code review at code complete or whatever the equivalent of that gate or milestone is. You do a pre-deployment or a pre-release test. We call it a pen test, right? An app pen test, a network pen test. You have a response mechanism post-release to take feedback from the environment, not just from your users to keep the thing developing, but for security, right? The security response center that Microsoft built was one of the sort of original examples, early examples of that, right? And I think it's that design, build, operate, whether it's waterfall, agile, Six Sigma, whatever you want to call it, those, to me at least, I would say those phases don't change. Same problem, different day. You're going to design, build, and operate stuff. You should do security at every one of those phases continuously.
Yep.
Now, what you do may vary, possibly quite a bit, but I think that's, again, Gary used some different terms, but that's his premise, and I think it is fundamentally accurate to this day.
Yep. Yeah, the book's over 10 years old, but it was the first book we did for our book club. And a lot, he said, with the exception of chapter 2, because we've had him on the show too, he said, throw out chapter 2, but other than that, the rest of it is good. And that was the risk management framework. He said, throw out chapter 2. But he said everything else still holds true to this day. So
I don't think you ripped it out, though.
Oh.
He said rip it out. You didn't.
No, I don't like doing that to books.
I mean,
No, my book did split, though, because it is kind of an older book, but the spine did split on it. I'm going to have to fix that again before I go. But so, Mr. Betcher had an example earlier about, building trust. I had to do a third-party review on a piece of software that my company was planning on bringing in. I'm not going to name any names, but the idea was that this system would help you generate sales leads. And the way that it did that was by reaching inside of every one of your salesperson's inboxes and generating the sales leads. And our salespeople gave it to us and said, hey, take a look at this. This is what we're going to use it for. And there was some other functionality along with like sales forecasting and stuff, but they wanted this part. And I'm like, what in the world makes you think that is actually a good idea? Because, and we talked to other people who had implemented this software solution before, and they were like, oh, yeah, we just had to, we didn't like that portion of it either. And I'm like, you think? And so what they ended up doing was having to have 2 separate email accounts for the salespeople. And we were like, yeah, that's not going to be possible or very workable. But somebody at that company thought that it was okay to root around in people's inboxes and look at all kinds of information to generate sales leads. And that was my point of, the designer or lack of design in this case opened up a possible, flaw in the system. Because, you pull all this information out of a salesperson's inbox, including, their kids' soccer, secret plans that, secret roadmaps and stuff like this that had no business being in the system in the first place. So, that was my point to, maybe solution designers need to be coming from a security background to go, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this kind of thing.
Well, see that. So now you set me up well, because that's a great example of the great anti-pattern of our times, right? Which is, I'll pick on Google a little bit. How much privacy are we all going to give up to have a personalized experience with technology? Right. I mean, you see this, you log into Gmail or Hotmail, not to pick on any specific company, but they customize ads because they're reading your mail.
That's true.
That's just true. All there's to it.
Yep.
And you're going along with it because you're getting a free email service.
That's true.
Sure.
So again, this sort of idea of patterns, and I use that word anti-pattern, which maybe not exactly correct, but my intent is that the technology industry, all of us have sort of bought into this notion that privacy is in the back seat for email, at least nowadays, right? Your company can monitor your email. That might be authorized given certain agreements, but your email service provider is certainly doing that stuff.
Yep.
And I think it's also interesting in this same problem, different day, to riff on that in sort of a more tactical level. We talked about IoT and mobile and cloud, all the hot stuff going on nowadays. But the main thing that kills all of us is email.
Oh yeah.
Phishing, right? Some of the big compromises of even sophisticated companies in the last 3, 4, 5 years phishing emails.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everybody's in it. Maybe it's kind of moving a little bit to Twitter and Slack and LinkedIn and the other places now, but fundamentally, that's the attack surface of the modern organization and the modern individual, right?
Yep.
And so that's kind of another great point from that anecdote.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We are not being careful enough there because we're already sort of flippant with it, right? We monitor what you're doing, and we don't consider that private anyways.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
We've met the enemy, and it is us.
That's right. That is right.
So Joel, we want to be respectful of your time. We know you're busy. Just if you gotta go, just say something provocative and drop the mic. We'll clean up. Right?
It works for me every time.
Well,
I know this is fun. I can go a little bit longer here, but
Okay.
Well, got more
So
questions.
you've started companies. Can you give us some lessons learned? I mean, maybe the best way to go about it, what you need to be successful. Just spill your brains on the podcast here about building companies.
With that, of course, there's no easy answer, and so there's libraries full of books on that sort of stuff, especially nowadays. With the unicorns we have, and Uber, and some security companies that have the sort of $1 billion valuations. But I guess off the top of my head, the thing that I remember the most about early days in those companies was again the people, right? I think the first thing you got to pick is a partner. Being an entrepreneur can be an incredibly lonely experience. It's you against the world, dealing with customers, handling legal, handling HR, handling business, technical delivery, etc. It is an overwhelming thing, and I have immense respect for the founders and the entrepreneurs and the business starters of this world. Small businesses are incredible things, and I think for me personally, the things I remember are, days that could have been very dark and lonely in the evolution and development of a company that weren't, because I had somebody there that I was partnered with. Foundstone. I mentioned Stuart, George, and of course there were many other people involved in that early on. Conversely was a company that I co-founded with a gentleman, Kevin Rich, who is still in the industry and a good friend. We would talk on the phone every day for hours at a time and strategize and bounce ideas and get and help each other, be advisors to each other on confronting the inevitable challenges of building a business. So I'd say that's probably your most important thing, is going to battle with somebody that you trust and that you enjoy working with.
Yep, I'm as an entrepreneur and an employee of one in a business. It was important for me when I started the podcast because I knew I couldn't carry the podcast myself. So, I found people I could trust, or tried to find people I could trust. And when I failed, I just picked up Mr. Betcher and went on. So
I was going to ask you where they went.
you got to put it on the tee, just knock it out of the park. So we're starting to get towards the top of the hour here. So I wanted to ask. So you're on Hacking Exposed 7. Did you stop at 7 because that came out in like 2012? So it's getting a little, I wouldn't say dated, but it's getting a little long in the tooth. Are you going to continue on with
there? I would like to. We chatted a little bit before we started here.
Uh-huh.
The biggest challenge is time in the day. All of the original co-authors of that sort of first book and the main series, which 7 is the latest
Mm-hmm.
edition, have day jobs, and I think there's still a passion there and still a desire to do that. I couldn't say 100% if that's in the cards. It's something that I'd like to do, and I think something that we've been discussing. I was the editor on Hacking Exposed Industrial Controls and SCADA,
Mm-hmm.
which came out in August, so more current.
Cool.
And I think that I've wanted to and have been continuing to try to grow the series and focusing on different technologies. And I'm always open to ideas for that. That one grew out of a random encounter in Houston with somebody who said, I've been thinking about writing a book on industrial controls and SCADA. I said, well, look, I can introduce you to a publisher and help you.
Very nice. So like an IoT version, or maybe car hacking. Maybe you get Chris Velasek and Charlie Miller to do a car hacking book or something like that.
I actually was thinking about that last night. Yeah, no, I think hacking exposed architecture is quite simple. It's attack and countermeasure. Back to this idea of sort of what came first, the attack or the control, right? It's a yin and yang thing, and it proved beyond my expectations. I think my co-authors as well to have traction and pull with people, and I'd like to stick with it and continue to, as I think you suggested, show that it has dividends in other technologies and new ecosystems that we're growing, like the connected car. I think that's a huge thing with obvious life safety implications. And the Tesla thing that we all saw, and the Charlie and Chris's the Jeep thing. But I think it's we're getting to the point. I think we're at the point. We may have passed the point where this is serious business, right? This is not just some kids in a basement, changing their grades on the school, Windows server, right?
Yep, exactly. Well, Ms. Berlin, Mr. Betcher, do you have any other questions?
Hey, I could go all day.
Let's do one more. Don't hold back. I can go a little bit longer. I haven't seen the call yet, so.
Okay. No. So, I had actually put it in. What leadership style works for you? My wife, who's Uber program manager at a small company here up in the Pacific Northwest, was talking to her boss today about various leadership styles. Myers-Briggs. The various ones. I forget the other one is something like Enginomics or something like that. Do you subscribe to any of those type of leadership styles, or do you just have a specific style or guidelines that you follow that are not necessarily defined?
I would put myself in the latter category. I do a little bit of management book reading. I think there's always the tendency or the desire to sort of put the world into neat categories and those sorts of things. And sometimes it works. You get, again, patterns that are helpful for you when leading teams. But ultimately, again, we're talking about human beings. It's a very complicated thing, and it probably is a very dependent upon the group and the type of person you are and the kind of leader that you want to be. And I certainly don't have any claim to any great insights there. I mean, the things that have worked for me is being more hands-on and being one of the troops. Going to war with the team. Understanding root and branch what it is that you're doing technically and as a business. Being in command of your story and being the teller of the story and the owner of the story on behalf of the organization that you lead or the team that you lead, right? When every discussion that you engage in with a customer or a member of the team or management or whatever is, why are you here and why are you doing this? And, how does the team function to deliver it, right? And I think if you have a deep understanding and a passion about that, it doesn't really matter kind of what your title or your level is. This is back to the DevOps metaphor, right? We're all squads, right? Little platoons is the metaphor from I think it was Burke or somebody back in sort of the foundational days of the United States. He was talking about the family, I think, then, and other sort of small components of society. I believe in that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the little platoons that make the difference.
Very cool. Very cool. So I don't know when exactly we're going to have this up, but you were supposed to be at RSA this year. Is there any place else that you're going to be speaking or will be attending any kind of conferences in the near future, in the next month or two?
That's a good question. It's funny when you mentioned that. I don't know how many folks are going to be in Bentonville, Arkansas in February, but I'm speaking at the ISACA chapter there, the Northwest Arkansas ISACA chapter.
Okay.
I think the date is, it's the 21st, I want to say, but I think you could look that up on the internet and nail that down if you had to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be at RSA. I'm trying to think of where else I'm going. That's the only thing that comes up in my mind right now. I'm sure I'm forgetting probably 2 or 3.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll look that up. Bentonville, huh? That's the headquarters of Walmart, isn't it?
I believe that is the case.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And a few other companies.
Very nice.
Yeah, I've been out there. I've spoken to the ISSA there. It's a nice little place to visit. I have some good friends there. So
very cool. All right. So if people wanted to get with you after the podcast and ask about leadership or application security or just anything in general, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
I think the easy thing is my Twitter handle is at Joel Scam, JoelScam. If you just ping me there, I can connect with you. I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's probably another really easy place to find me.
Okay.
And make a connection.
Very cool. All right.
And my email address is pretty easy to find off of either of those spots or just looking around the internet. So. All
right. Excellent. Well, thank you, Joel, for coming on the show. We say this to everybody, but it doesn't necessarily make it less true. If you have anything you'd like to come on and discuss with us in the future, or you have a blog post you're feeling real passionate about and you want to, get it out to a wider audience, just feel free to hit us up because, we always like having people on of your caliber and to talk about things that affect InfoSec as a whole.
Well, I really appreciate that. I'm honored that you folks have had me on. I've enjoyed the discussion, and I might take you up on that.
Very cool.
It's been good, fun discussion.
Right on. All right. Awesome. Well, Miss Berlin, you've just joined the show, and actually a couple of people who just got caught up on our podcast feed is surprised that you're on here.
I know. They need to listen more regularly, I
know.
I guess.
I know.
This is like episode 4 or 5 now.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Great feedback from the ShmooCon audio, so that was very good.
I know.
Yeah. So if people wanted to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing so?
On pretty much every social media out there at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR.
You know that's not spelled right now. I'm just messing. I get that.
Neither's breaking.
Oh no!
Look.
The zombie has come out of the ground again.
All right. Yeah, I heard that. Mr. Betcher. Mr. Betcher, how would people get a hold of you too, you punk?
On Twitter as well, at Betcherpone.
Yep. And cool. Very cool. Very cool. So we have a Slack channel for people who want to join us and discuss things or get involved with our CTF club, which me and Miss Amanda just started last week. It's going quite well.
Going really well.
Say what?
Great. I said it's going really well.
I know.
I've been having a lot of fun.
I'm really surprised because, people are actually enjoying it. So it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can sign up for that if you want to. You can go to https breaksec.signup.team. We have about 175 people in the general channel. We also do a book club. We're just, I need to schedule the last chapter. We're going to do chapter 12 of Gary McGraw's book, Software Security, Building Security, and we're also looking for options for other books. What'll happen is it'll meet every couple weeks and we go over a chapter on Google Hangouts like this. Thoughts and, we talk about and have good discussions. So that's always something too. You can join us in the book club channel there as well. So if you have any kind of, we believe in the value for value model here on the show. So if you get value from Joel's insights or, you like the interviews we do at various cons, like the one for ShmooCon that Miss Amanda just did, please feel free to donate on Patreon. You can donate as little as $1. There's other tiers, but I'm going to probably get rid of those because, I find we don't need them. If and that just supports our libsyn hosting. So we would appreciate it if you find value to donate $1 if you want. If not, it's still going to be free. You just feel a little better about yourself. That kind of thing. So yes, thank you, Joel, again, and Miss Amanda and Mr. Betcher for coming on the show. And that was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. You have a great week, and we'll see you again real soon.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank you.